Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third annual Pattie, Lathan, Browder Lectureship. I'm Dr. Dina Evans, and I'm the Dean for the College of Nursing, and I would like to extend a thank you to the students, the faculty, and the staff and special guests that are here with us today. I would like to call out a couple of those special guests. We're joined by our Provost, Dr. Kimberly McCorkle, and thank you. And also Dr. William Browder and his daughter, Megan Stone-Cipher, who will be integral to this story. So welcome. So we are honored to offer this lectureship that was established in 2022 through an endowment by Dr. William Browder in memory of his late wife, Pattie. Pattie's exceptional nursing skills saved their daughter, Megan's, life when she was very young. This lectureship celebrates Pattie's lifelong dedication to nursing principles, and the Browder family, through this endowment, hopes to highlight the profound impact that nurses can have on others, but also what impact that they can have even when they're their own families. It is my pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Dr. Sue Hassmiller. Dr. Hassmiller is co-founder and principal for SULU, S-U-L-U, Coaching and Consulting, which focuses on galvanizing the skills and expertise of healthcare leaders. But she's more than that as well. She is certified as an individual and group coach by the International Coaching Federation. And in addition to her coaching, Dr. Hassmiller continues her work in academia and service to the nursing profession. She is a professor of nursing at Florida State University and an adjunct faculty at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Dr. Hassmiller has held numerous leadership positions at the American Red Cross, and she's also received the Florence Nightingale Medal from the International Red Cross for her courageous contributions to the profession. She is an elective member of the National Academy of Medicine and a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing, where she holds living legend status. In 2025, she was awarded the Nell J. Watts Lifetime Achievement in Nursing Award from Sigma Theta Tau International, and she and her husband Lou live in Cary, North Carolina, and he is a co-founder of SULU Coaching and Consulting. We look forward to Dr. Hassmiller's presentation today, which she has entitled, A Call for Compassionate Care in Nursing, My Story. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Hassmiller to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. It is absolutely a beautiful day, isn't it? So you're here, you're learning your profession. So hopefully, in my being here, my story will have some meaning in your career. Here, and what I just learned yesterday, which is the storytelling capital of the United States. So that's pretty cool. I love that. So thank you very much, Anne, and thank you, Dr. Evans, for having me here. It is a great pleasure to be here. Many of you have entered the nursing profession because you have a deep desire to serve and take care of patients. I know that's why you're here. Some of you will have never yet been affected by having a family member like Dr. Browder and Megan and myself come to terms with their life, so to speak. But mark my word, you live long enough and you will have someone in your life very, very, very meaningful to you that will be going through something, and you will put in your nursing skills more than you have ever imagined. So my hope is that you'll remember my story here today, and is that you go on to be nurses. Let me get a sense here. How many of you are undergraduate nurses? Undergraduate. Ah, okay. What about graduate? Okay, just a few. Oh, I love it. Okay. Most of you are here learning. Wonderful. All right, so my hope is that you'll remember my story and that you'll use it to provide what I'm here to talk to you about, which is compassionate care. Let me see. I gotta get the, I guess I have to click. Okay. So in my life, there's sort of a before and an after. So there is a before, which is when I was married to my husband. His name is Bob. And there's an after time, which is after his accident and everything that happened. So when I wasn't at work, I worked primarily, had a lot of leadership positions in my life, but I spent the last 25 years before I started my encore career with my own business in the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is the country's largest healthcare philanthropy. And I was responsible for all of, I don't know if you're learning this and if your professors are bringing it in, but all of the future of nursing work. The Future of Nursing 2020 report, and then the latest report that I did out of the National Academy of Medicine that had to do with nurses helping to achieve health equity in our country. So when I wasn't at work, my husband and I had a long-term, loving relationship. We were married for 37 years. We hiked, we biked, we welcomed 2 grandchildren into our lives, and we were filled with joy, and we're just about to take a big trip. This thing is not exactly working. When I got a call that people don't want to get, it was one of the worst days in my life. The worst day is coming, and I'll tell you in the story. But I was at a meeting in Philadelphia, and I was sitting in the front row because I wanted to pay attention, and the phone kept ringing, and I kept ignoring it because I didn't recognize the phone number. My husband was to pick me up from that meeting, and when I see that he didn't come, he was very reliable, responsible. We're getting ready for the big trip. When he didn't come, I got a knot in the bottom of my stomach. So I looked at that phone number again, and I thought, I wonder if that phone number has something to do with my husband not being there. So I dialed it, pushed the button, not knowing, and they answered it that it was the local trauma center. And they said that my husband had been in a bicycle accident, and he was in the trauma unit, and I should come immediately. And when I asked, as a nurse, when I asked if I could speak to my husband, it'll take me like 45 minutes to get there, but in the meantime, let me speak to him. So it was in that instant, everything changed. When the nurse said, I can't really, I said, just bring the phone, because I know you just bring a phone to a patient, right? Bring the phone to the patient. When the nurse said, I can't really do that, I knew it was serious. So I found my way to the trauma center, and I found my husband, who was to that point an athlete, riding his bike all the time, running, a quadriplegic, an instant quadriplegic. So that was the beginning of my journey not as a nurse, but I had my nurse's hat on, but I became a family member, and it was very, very, very difficult. And this is really what I want to convey to you today, the importance of understanding what's going on from a family member's point of view. It was horrible, and I came. I immediately set up shop. I never left his side, but I began to journal, which I'll get to at the end. Brought all the pictures in because I know how important it is as a nurse. I remember, when there are pictures at the patient's bedside, to look to see, they tell stories. They tell the stories of how a family member wants that person conveyed. It could be a marriage picture. It could be a picture with grandkids. But those pictures are very, very meaningful. And there was one nurse there, and I will say only one nurse, sadly, one nurse, that paid attention in the way that I needed her to pay attention. Yes, it was a very, very busy neuro-intensive care unit, lots of chaos, people running around. But there was one nurse who came in religiously every day, paid attention to the pictures, looked at the travel books, because we were big travelers, that I had at the bedside, touched my husband in the only place he could still feel touch, which was on his forehead and cheeks, played music, asked me, what kind of music does your husband like? So these are the kinds of things that helped me in what was to become my journey in profound grief. All right. So, you know, I understand, I'm a nurse, right? So I had my nurse's hat on. I knew, even though I hadn't worked at the front lines in a very long time, you know, it's very busy. There's technology, there's documentation, there's a lot of things that nurses have to tend to. And technology, paperwork, I knew that there were staffing issues. There are all these things going on that a normal sort of family member wouldn't necessarily know. But I gave some leeway, if you will, because I knew that nurses would deal with all of those issues. But it was Kathy who, at the end, after 10 days, I made the decision that we were going to have to turn off the machines because every system in my husband's body was failing. And there are so many stories in those 10 days that I have that I can't get into that have to do with other nurses and other providers and what happened. But I will just tell you that on that last day, Kathy thankfully was there again, my special nurse. And she helped me dial down the machines, the breathing machine, as the day went along. She worked the 7 to 7 shift. And I was getting really nervous because I knew her shift was ending at 7 p.m. And she kept saying, your husband is an athlete, you know, his heart is not giving up. And she encouraged me to talk to him. And at the end, probably at 6:45, she came into the room with her coat on. This is the middle of October in Philadelphia, with her coat on and her purse strapped across her chest. And I said to her, I'm just not sure I can do this, Kathy. I'm just not sure. And I started to cry, and she said, I'm not leaving you. So she tore off her coat. Now, not everyone can do this, right? But she tore off her coat, threw her purse to the side, and she says, I'm not leaving you. I'll stay here as long as you need me. So needless to say, I nominated her for a Daisy Award, but she has had many Daisy Awards, and she is such a role model. And when I talk about compassion, you know, maybe in your heads already, I'm not sure, but I know I've talked to so many nurses across the country who said, well, you know, we have to be efficient. There's a lot to do. I don't have time for compassion. But I hope to make the case for you that compassion can be a 30 or 60-second moment in a person's life. It can be a touch of a hand. It can be, and it's always putting the phone down, putting the computer down. I can't tell you how many times people came into that room and asked me if I had a question when their head was halfway out the door. So what do patients and families, what do they need? To understand and agree with the care being provided, most of all, is to be asked. Because you don't know, you cannot assume. Here's what you can assume. This is what you can assume. You might be in your comfort zone in the hospital, in a clinic, working, you know, you have your scrubs on. That's your comfort zone for most of your day. This is not the comfort zone of the person that you're taking care of. You can assume that they have, you know, perhaps, depending on the situation, fear of the unknown, anxiety, you know, flight or fight. A lot of things are going on, and it makes a big difference if you ask. And some people will say, well, I don't want to open the Pandora's box, because if I ask, you know, I just have very limited time. I can't listen to all this. But you can. The more experienced you become, you know how to sort of ask a question and then guide the information that you need. But that's most important, is asking. to be able to express hopes and fears, to understand and to be acknowledged. This is what human beings want, right? Right? You're learning that. Being acknowledged in the workplace, there's a lot of strategies that I'll talk about, right? That are going on now, joy in the workplace. But recognition and acknowledgement as a human being, we're all here on this earth for a short amount of time, and this is, you learn about Maslow hierarchy of needs. So health worker burnout. So I'm very aware because it is my work. I work at the national level with the nursing profession, so it is my job. And it was my job when I was there with my husband to know what was going on with the nursing profession. So I'm very well aware of nursing burnout. And, at the time he was in the hospital, and certainly afterwards with COVID. COVID, of course, exacerbated everything. Everyone went to their cubbies. It was particularly hard, I think, for nurses and the health professions to take care of people when family members couldn't come in, and everything was on computers and phones. A very, very hard time, and it was a hard time to come out of that as well. And what I do know is with burned out healthcare providers, you can't give what you don't have. You can't give what you don't have. So I'm making the proclamation that this is what family members need, but I know that your cup needs to be filled first or as well, right? So very fortunately, even when my husband was in the hospital and afterwards, during the pandemic, hospitals and healthcare organizations were getting the picture, right? Scores were low, patient experience scores were low, employee engagement scores were very low, people were leaving. In the nursing profession, that's something else I tracked very carefully, there was a big turnover where nurses were coming, staying perhaps for a year or two, and then moving on. So it was a big money waster, if I can say it that way, a big money waster for healthcare organizations. And, for better, for worse, money talks. So did they care about our healthcare and our well-being? Yes, I think some people did, but it was mostly the money that it took to bring new people in and this churn that was going on in the country. All right. This is a good thing. In 2010, right, the Affordable Care Act passed, and it helped a lot of people with a lot of things. And one of the most important things in my world that the Affordable Care Act was to tack on a financial incentive to healthcare organizations around patient experience. They already had a financial incentive and like a zing, a debit, if you weren't paying attention to quality, right? There were quality indicators. But now, all of a sudden, somebody there was getting the picture that patient experience was somehow connected to all of this. So what I am going to do from here on out is really give you the business case. And it was a business case in this country. The business case having to do with money and how we save money, but how that's attached to worker burnout and patient experience, because it's all connected. It's all connected. All right. So there's a lot of research around this. So when people say, I don't have time to be compassionate, it's not efficient to be compassionate, hopefully the culture that is being set in your healthcare organization is one that role models and pays attention, because it's not only the right thing to do and the nice thing to do, right? But it makes sense for the bottom line. because all of these things are connected, and we know this now. And this is what I want you to know. When patients say they have good care, you know, they have the form that they fill out at the end, right? Everybody's sending us these evaluation forms. So when they say they have good care, not only on their form, but with their neighbors and who they're talking to and their family members, there are connections to that healthcare facility with lower readmission rates, shorter lengths of stay, fewer hospital-acquired conditions, higher patient safety indicator scores, and higher patient engagement scores. Costs decrease and outcomes improve if there is a culture of compassion. It's been proven, okay? So it's not just about being nice. I should have more than just nurses in here, because nurses know that compassion is important. I should have the healthcare leaders here in this community to really, hopefully they know this and understand this. Okay. So more evidence. I'm going to give you a lot more ways to connect the dots so you understand this. So higher patient experience scores. When there are higher patient experience scores, number one, remember I told you there is a link to more sort of, I'll just call it bonus money from CMS because you've done a great job with patients, right? So that's not up there. But when people are well taken care of and they say, that was a really good experience. Yeah, I had an operation and it sucked and I didn't like any of that. But you know what? The care that I got was really excellent. The nurses took great care of me. I liked my doctor. When people say that and they have that in their head, then there's better follow-up. They're just open. They're more open. Better teamwork, leadership, and quality. There are more and new repeat visits because people give referrals. Now, I think you just have one health system in this area, right? Yeah. But in other parts of the country, there's like a ton of competition, right? A ton of competition. And people can go any place. I'm on the board of a the largest healthcare system in New Jersey, Hackensack Meridian Health System. But there are other choices, even New York City. So it's very critical for people, especially in an area of competition, to have people walking out of that facility saying, that was damn good care. I would go back there, and you should too. And fewer physicians are sued. You know this, Dr. Browder, right? Yeah, you do know that. Okay. So Christina Dempsey is someone I liked to follow in the past. She was the chief nurse at Press Ganey, an organization that keeps track of all these scores, right? And helps hospitals. They have a consulting firm. They make all these connections. Well, she wrote a book called The Antidote to Suffering: How Compassionate Connected Care Improves Safety, Quality, and Experience. Okay? And so she set forth a model for what a healthcare facility should follow. Right? So compassion-connected care is at the center of that experience. You know what drives me the most crazy? I was telling the dean last night and Ann Godfrey. This is what really peeves me as I work across the nation. Every healthcare facility and every hospital in this country starts out their mission and vision with the following words. You know what they are? We are patient-centered. We are patient-centered. Patients are at the center of our care, right? And it's not always true. It's not always true. I think it's a meaningful statement to make, and I think people do try. But you really have to really be very intentional with your strategies to really ensure that what you say, you really mean, okay? So working on your culture, your operational efficiencies, your clinical excellence, and your caring behaviors, all of this matters. You cannot just have this three-pronged approach, clinical excellence, operational efficiency, and somehow working on your mission and vision without having the caring behaviors. So In other words, the pathway to compassionate care is, okay, the provision of exceptionally skilled clinical care in an environment that is efficient and effective by engaged and resilient caregivers, right? That's us. In a culture driven by a shared purpose to achieve the optimal outcome for all involved. And this is what matters. Look at these things that Christina Dempsey, the chief nurse at Press Ganey, who tracks all of this stuff around the world, these are the things that matter. If you're talking about patient experience that is connected to outcomes, right? That is connected to financial incentives. If you care about all of those steps, then you should care about what people want and need when they are out of their comfort zone. Empathy, courtesy, they want choices. If something goes wrong, they need a service recovery, right? Personalized. You know what service recovery is? When you do something wrong, you try to make up for it. Yeah. So, my husband died in 2016. It was a very, very, very difficult. I took a lot of time off of work. It was an awful journey. I could hardly get my sea legs. I could hardly talk to people. But then I did. And I went back to work. And then I set about, because I had the wonderful perch that I did as being the senior nurse at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, I could do these things for our nursing profession that mattered, that I thought that mattered. So I interviewed 25 of the top healthcare organizations in our country and their nursing leaders, okay? And then I published it in the Journal of Nursing Administration. But I interviewed them on this notion about, what are your best practices for patient experience? What matters in your healthcare organization? And their activities focused on engaging families, resulted in patient experience scores and decreased, yeah, I said all that, so let's go on. Okay, so here are some of the things that they said. Hopefully some of the things I have on this screen here is what you're learning and what you're seeing in your healthcare facilities, okay? Because this speaks of how we engage. I see a no. You're shaking your head no? Okay. Anyways, hopefully. Code Lavender is one that you may not be familiar with. I was not familiar with it when I did all of my interviewing, but that is a very intentional strategy of having chaplains involved. Most of us know that hospitals have a chaplain. Depending upon the size of the facility, they may have a couple of chaplains based on their niche, maternal child and ICU, right? But Code Lavender is when there's a particularly stressful event, a traumatic event on a unit that's going on, and either with patients or with nurses, whatever, but you can call a Code Lavender. So here's the thing too. This is a differentiator in healthcare systems, this one right here, including patients and families on rounds, okay? I don't know what your health system does here. Involves them in decision-making, enables them to ask questions, and shares information, engages them as partners in the care of their family members, improves safety and quality. Okay. One of the most devastating things that I experienced when I was in that neurointensive care unit, it was a very large unit. It had hallways going this way, it had hallways going this way, very large. Every morning, I can't remember, let's just say 7:30, because I rarely left my husband's bedside. I did try to go to a friend's house and sleep for a couple of hours every night, and a very good friend of mine meditated with me. It was quite the journey. But I was there first thing in the morning, 7 a.m., and around 7:30, I'll say, every morning, this is sort of what I saw. Can you hear me if I come out here? Okay. So here I am, sitting in my husband's room, and I see this pack of white coats coming down the hallway with their stethoscopes and their walking computers. And yes, they would be talking to themselves, but mostly they would be looking at their computer. They stopped at every patient room. This is a family member's brain, but my nurse's brain, and my nursing leadership brain, and my healthcare system brain. Everything was cranking, right? And I see them stopping in a semicircle around each patient's room, and a couple of rooms, and then they would move on as a pack. I called them the intimidators. So I saw that the first day, and I saw that the second day. And I said, something is very wrong with this picture. Something is very wrong with this picture. This is about my husband who's behind this door. And this is about me, and you're out here. I'm in my bed, right? So what did I do on the third day? I grabbed one of those pictures. I had a picture of my husband, an 8x10, with me sitting with him. And I came up on the third day, when they were in the semicircle, I just pulled up a chair, and I just sat there, and I held this picture high the whole entire time. And that went on the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, and I knew how to behave as a family member. You don't want a crazy or out-of-sorts family member getting, God forbid, emotional, right? So I knew how to behave. Right? I knew how to interact with healthcare providers because they were me. I was also one of them and also one of them. So I was in two roles. And on the fifth day, the head resident guy said to me, would you like to tell us about your husband? On the fifth day. So I knew not to go on and on. I knew not to get crazy emotional. Save that for later. I knew this was a teaching moment. And I had a number of teaching moments during those 10 days where in my grief, I was also the professor and the teacher and the nurse. But at that moment, when he gave me that opportunity, I said, I would love to. I'd like everybody in this group to know that my husband is the CEO of a nonprofit. He's a Vietnam vet. By the way, he's a Purple Heart. He has a Purple Heart. We just had our second grandchild. This is a picture of John. We've been married for 37 years, and we love to bike and hike. And by the way, what got him in this situation in the first place. So I just skimmed the surface, right? And then I probably took 3 to 5 minutes, and at the end of that time, or maybe during, the head resident guy, I saw a couple of tears come down. How often, or had he ever done that in his entire life? I don't know. But I had other touch points that week that sort of indicated maybe not, maybe not. So what's a better way? Research. Everything I'm telling you here is research and evidence. This is not just my opinion. I sort of believe in what I found, right? But it is the evidence and the research that if you do rounds with family members, and you know, there's ways of doing this, right? But if you include family members, if you include patients, that the experience and the outcomes is a lot better for all. There was a campaign, I can't remember when, let me see, you know, let's just say probably 2018, 2019, 2020, when healthcare organizations were really paying much more attention to patient experience. And remember, why were they paying attention? right? The money, right? They cared. There were a lot of people who did care, but it was really affecting their bottom line. So they were trying, how do we get people to go out and give referrals? How do we get them to say nice things about us? Well, you have to pay attention. You have to back it up. So there was a campaign in Scotland called What Matters to You? What matters to you? So it's a matter of asking, listening, and doing. Asking, listening, and doing. You can ask and not do anything, right? And that's meaningful in and of itself. Okay, so best practices according to my research, you got to work on changing the workplace culture. It comes from the top and it comes from the sides too. You've heard people say, not just nurses, doctors, but everybody. If you look at the business literature in this country, it's still the same, that people don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers. The single link to nurses' satisfaction and engagement in this country, and has not changed, is a positive working environment. Yeah, there are unions in this country, and they want other things. They want more money in their pocket, all the things that nurses need and deserve, right? But the number one differentiator for nurses and their careers and their satisfaction and their happiness and their ability to give is a positive work environment. So everything that you can do to help your colleagues with that environment, everyone has a responsibility. It's not just leaders. All of us have a responsibility in keeping a positive work environment. There are barriers, right? Is this coming up right? Yeah, okay. Barriers, I've mentioned time and efficiency. People are always saying, I don't have time, I gotta be efficient, I gotta get things done. They're not paying for overtime, I've gotta do all these things. Yes, that's true. Technology. There are ways of using technology. I'm not going to get into these things, but there are certainly ways these days to use technology to benefit patient care and to hinder patient care. You have to know the difference. You have to be a human being. Nurses are so important. They are so important in this country, in the world, as a profession. I know I have Dr. Browder here, who is a physician, and maybe others, but I'm going to tell you that nurses are the most important. And again, invite patients and families to play a role. I don't have a slide up here, but there's more research. Here's more research. I don't want you to forget this. Think of circles, right? It's the compassionate care loop. Here's the thing. Nurses are burned out, right? Unburned out. There's a lot of things that nurses can do for themselves and for their environment, right? All these things. But one way nurses get fed as human beings, as emotional human beings doing their job, is when patients feed back to them, you're such a great nurse. I can't believe you did that for me. You saved my life, or I wouldn't have been able to do X if it weren't for you. So nurses get fed on a daily basis by these comments that maybe their colleagues and staff, yes, and there's Daisy Awards and all that. But when you have a patient in real time telling you something, it's meaningful. And the link is this. When you get fed that way, the more you get fed, the more you have to give. But guess what? It's a loop like this. So you have to give. Inefficient to give compassionate care, it can take 60 seconds. Again, a touch, closing the computer, putting the phone down, looking someone in the eye, and saying, how is this day going for you? How is this day going for you, right? So, yeah, and so when you do that for patients, they feel that when your cup is full and you give, then they feel that. That's the loop. That's the compassionate care loop. Okay. I'm going to try to go a little bit quickly. Yeah, so caregivers also suffer. You know all of these things. You can read the list. You've heard about these things, I'm sure. And when we're burned out, when anybody's burned out, not just nursing, but anybody, right? But I'll talk about nurses here. These are the things, according to research, that happen. You're burned out. You have a half-empty cup or a cup that's hardly filled at all. Then these things happen. Errors, substance abuse, high turnover, anger, all of these things, right? And then all of this is connected. I said that. Oh, let me just, that's it. This is research too. When nurses recommend their place of work, patients are also more likely to recommend the organization. So at the national levels, Prescani and some of the other evaluative organizations, they have found that there is a link between nursing satisfaction and patient satisfaction. That link is there. When one is dropped, the other one tends to drop. When one is elevated, the other one tends to be elevated. So there's a lot that healthcare organizations, you can see, have to pay attention to. Acknowledging what we're going through in real time, in our professional journeys. We have to acknowledge what we're going through. Management needs to be involved. Teamwork is vital. Empathy and trust and open communication. So here are some of the things that I think I took this from a national report that has been provided for healthcare organizations across the country. Some of the things that really matter, if you're really intent on this journey of making care better in your facility, these are the things that you need to pay attention to. Okay. And then resilience. You've heard that word a lot. What does it mean to be resilient? It means that you're aware, and this could mean an individual's resilience or a healthcare unit's or an organization. What's going on in your own life, what's going on in your environment, how that environment is affecting you. So you have to be cognizant and take a moment and say, I'm being this way because of that. That's being aware, right? So awareness is first and foremost. And then agility, and then agency. Agency, of course, is having your voice, speaking up, so important. Interprofessional collaboration, a lot of research, evidence linked to the importance of teamwork in healthcare. So here are some key takeaways. Compassion must be prioritized. You got to talk about it. With the very, very large healthcare system that I belong to, I can't tell you how many hospitals they have now. I don't know. But the CEO, even at that level, talks about compassionate care. You have to live and breathe it. There's so many things that you have to pay attention to, but this has to be at the core. Taking time to establish a connection, 30 to 60 seconds. Adopting best practices that I showed you. Supporting your colleagues and promoting interprofessional care. So the story continues. I mentioned along the way that I had a lot of things happen in those 10 days with other providers, with healthcare organizations, with life in general, and I was keeping, one of the things that helped me tremendously get my sea legs back and really helped me to be able then to come out to the nation and talk about this was that journal, and then eventually people, many thousands were reading that journal, and they said there has to be a book. So then my goal for myself was to turn a lot of what I'm talking to you about now into that into that book. And then finally, my story continues, because 5 years ago, I learned of a colleague of mine. Actually, he was my boss at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. 30 years ago, when I started, he hired me there. And 5 years ago, I learned, and we weren't super close because he was the big boss. You know how that goes, right? So I learned 5 years ago from another colleague that Lou lost his wife suddenly as well. So I reached out to him. He was one of my journal readers online. So we knew immediately that we had a trusting relationship. And after a year of helping him with his grief process, we fell in love, and now we have been happily married for 3 years. And as the story finishes now, I retired from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and my goal in my life, in the short time that we all have to live on this earth, I wanted to continue to give back to the nursing profession. And I do that in a number of ways. I'm very involved with my Red Cross pen in Red Cross, extremely involved with Red Cross and other sort of organizations. But I wanted to be more hands-on. So I've come full circle, so to speak. I started as a frontline nurse. I had a lot of different positions. And now my husband and I, as of 5 years ago, we went back to school to learn how to be executive leadership coaches. So satisfaction now in helping the next generation of nursing leaders in this country and learning what's going on from the front line. Secondhand, yes, but I still believe that I'm there with everybody. So that is my journey, and I thank you so much for having me here and listening to my story. And I'm so impressed, I have to say, with Dr. Browder, your support of this lectureship. I've done a number of lectureships, and they're sort of random. People come and whatever the person happens to have an expertise in, you talk about that. But in this college, there's a specific theme around families, right? What it's like to be a nurse in a family where something has happened, and how you stepped up. So I love the theme here. I hope you do this forever. I hope you support this school forever. It's a wonderful theme, and I hope that all of you in your nursing career as you go out, remember Pattie. Thank you for having me.